This is perfect.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel where I try to cook for my wife. Today we are going to try and make another restaurant favorite. We're going to make Gamjatang, or in English, pork bone soup. But the name of this soup has honestly confused me a little bit. Tang means soup in Korean, and guk also means soup. And then there's jjigae, which, well, that's more of a stew. We'll leave that one to the side. So I wondered, what is the difference between tang and guk? Do you know? So I had my research team look into this for you guys. It turns out that guk is a soup that is cooked quite quickly with not too many ingredients. It's a fairly simple one that you just throw together quickly and enjoy. That doesn't mean it's not delicious. That doesn't mean it's not amazing. But it's much quicker to make than tang. Tang is often a soup that has the bone left in the meat and has to cook for hours and hours. And there's actually quite a few more ingredients as well, just to bring out more aroma, more flavor. Now the second part that my research team had to look into was the gamja part. Because this soup literally translates to potato soup, but in English we call it pork bone soup. And obviously the star of this dish doesn't really seem to be the potato. It seems to be much more about the pork bones themselves. So it turns out nobody really knows for sure why it's called Gamjatang. But there are actually three theories. The first theory states that it used to be a potato soup made with pork bone broth. Now this makes sense. And as pork became more readily available to people, they were able to leave more meat on the bone. Now this theory I think is actually pretty decent. What do you think? The second theory is that pork was actually seen as a little bit of a lower quality meat and people preferred beef. So to have a dish called pork bone soup wouldn't be very desirable for people. But everybody loves potatoes, so Gamjatang. The third theory, and my fact checkers have already said this is false. The third theory is that gamja is another word for backbone, or for the bone that is used in this soup. Now we definitely know that this is not the case because there's not a single Korean butcher who would refer to the backbone or spine as gamja. This theory was actually made popular on a Korean TV show, and it turns out it's just not true. There's a little bit of information about why Gamjatang is called Gamjatang. I think the English name is pretty good. Pork bone soup. It makes sense. Anyway, let's make it. I found this awesome little Napa cabbage at the grocery store. This will be perfect for today's meal. We're just going to rip off about 5 or 6 leaves. Now you can use more for this meal if you want to, that's up to you. But for me this is enough. What you want to do is you want to make sure you wash these ones first, and then we're going to blanch them for about a minute or so. There we go, they really color up nicely this way. Make sure you rinse them with some cold water. And then you just want to peel them right in half. Now you can obviously cut them, but from what I've seen, this is how all the cool Korean ladies are doing this. Next up we're going to prep the main star of the dish, the pork neck bones. Now they do have a little bit of meat on them, which is perfect. The more meat, the more delicious, honestly. And we just want to make sure we give this a good rinse, and then we're going to boil them for about 6 minutes. This will really clean up the meat and the bones. While that's boiling, we're going to prep some of the vegetables. So smack 1 onion. We're going to karate chop these green onions. And we're just using the white parts, or the thicker parts, for the broth itself. Add 2 tablespoons of garlic. I always use the minced one because it's just easier. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of mirin, 1.5 teaspoon of ginger. We're going to crush 1 chili pepper in our hands. Actually, just use a knife. Honestly, this may seem funny, but my hands were burning for hours after this. I really regret it. I'm going to add a little bit of black pepper and 2 tablespoons of Gochujang. Now, I really should have probably used a spoon to get this out, but I was lazy. It makes a mess. Now you don't have to skim this stuff off the top. The only reason I skimmed this off is because my pot was about to overflow. But you can see how much dirt came out of this pork. Make sure you wash this spot. Make sure you wash this spot, and we will bring about 8 cups of water to a boil. So our veggies and our pork are gonna go back in this pot now. And this will be the base for our soup. Allow the pork and the vegetables to boil for about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Next up, we're going to add some fish sauce. Now I don't want to add too much, my wife doesn't really like it, but if you want, you can add an extra tablespoon if you really like this stuff. And we're going to add some soy sauce. You'll notice that a lot of the ingredients that we're using are actually quite fragrant. I think Koreans really don't like the smell of pork, so they're trying to hide it. For me, I was scraping the bottom of the gochujang container here, so you can use a little bit more than what I did, but I did about 2.5 tablespoons to be honest. And then you just want to add 1 tablespoon of gochugaru and a little bit more ginger. Why not? This is where you would add about 1/4 cup of Perilla seed powder, but for me, I cannot get it. And most recipes say it's optional, even though I don't really think it is. But let's see if it is. Let's try it. Since the dish is called Gamjatang, let's add some gamja, some potatoes to it. So we need 3 potatoes and we will cut them into quarters. And one vegetable that actually didn't really show too well are the bean sprouts here. I used about 100 grams, but I also kept some for a garnish for later on. So after you add your vegetables, just add your sauce. Try to mix it. My pot is way too small for this. And then we're going to let it boil until the potatoes are soft. Ooh, that looks good. Would you eat this? All we gotta do now is serve it up nicely, make it look a little bit pretty, and then my wife gets to try it. So I normally try to make sure I have lots of pork in there, because honestly, that's the highlight of the dish for me. And my wife loves potatoes, so I gotta make sure I add some of those as well. Add a little bit of the cooked cabbage and some bean sprouts. And just because I had some changyang gochus left over, I'm putting them on here. You don't have to. And you can add some green onions and some sesame seeds. Just whatever you want to do to make it look pretty. It's your dish. And there you have it. We made gamjatang. Pretty easy, very delicious. Let's see what the wife thinks.
It's my colleague. I will eat it right away, okay?
Okay.
It looks like a professional gamjatang to me. Soup tastes perfect. Potato got cooked really well. And then the meat part. Oh, it has so much food inside. This is perfect. Gamjatang. This is one of the food again that I did not think that we would be able to make it at home. But you always prove me I'm wrong. The meat part cooked really well, just like restaurant. I think it is really important that meat is falling off basically from the bone, and I think you recreate it really nicely. This food normally you put Perilla seed powder, but we didn't have that. But actually without it, it tastes fantastic. Still really good. Wow, the way that you cook meat, sweetie. Restaurant right here. Amazing.